Hey guys, it's Mary, and I am here to show you how I made the envelope flip book with the Planner Society digital papers. So this is the one that I made and showed on the site. So I'll show you the basics of how I did that. I started out with 4 envelopes that I made with the envelope punch board. And that is the envelope punch board, and I actually have all those envelopes made already. I did, on this particular one that I'm making today, I used an 8 1/4 by 8 1/4 square of paper. So that cut off all the, my printer doesn't print to the edge, so it cut off the edges, the little bit of white edges. On my original one, I used 8 1/2 by 8 1/2, and I scored at 4 1/2. Was my first score line, which is not on the punch board. I didn't have my glasses on and I misread where to score. For this one, I did the 8 1/4 by 8 1/4 square, and I scored at 4 1/4, which again I think are just measurements that I made up. So you can do whatever you want to make your envelope. And this ends up creating a 5 1/2 by 5 1/4 space. So I made my envelopes. Oh, I did. I'm going to throw this in there really. I just used my Martha Stewart scoreboard or Stampin' Up scoreboard, whatever. And I scored an 1/8 of an inch to give it a little bit of room when the whole thing folds up. And then on this final piece, I scored an additional 3/8 of an inch to give it to wrap around to the front. So it has the space for the side. So I went ahead and got the other 3 envelopes already put together and attached together. You can use whatever glue you like. I prefer wet glue. It just works better for me. The tape runners don't always make it happy. On this one, I didn't mind the little bit that hangs over the edge. On the other ones that I've made, I don't think you can see it on any of these. I covered it. I just cut off the tip because I didn't like the way that looked. So it's entirely up to you. I'm gonna go through this pretty quick, and then I'll show you what I did. I did a video earlier this week, and it was just way too long. So that's why I've got a lot more stuff prepped this time. I did not ink the edges, but you can do that easily with just whatever color ink you want. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to add the glue, show you from the white side, I think it's easier, from this, just above this 1/8 of an inch score line, and then over this flap to glue on my envelopes. And that's what I've done with each of these envelopes. So it's the same thing. And you can use whatever, if you have an ATG, if you have glue stick, you know, just whatever adhesive you like to work with. It really doesn't matter. I like the wet glue because it gives you a little bit of wiggle room. You're trying to line it up so that your edges are pretty close to where they should be. Then I just go to right above that score line. And if not, just, you can recrease it. It's not a big deal. Okay, and this one, I was getting it all together and, yeah, glued down my decorative paper and then realized I still had an envelope to add. So we're just going to cover that up. It's not a big deal. On this one, it'll all flip, and because of those score lines, they all flip nicely. On my other one, I added a magnet. I added a little washer. I didn't grab those. Sorry. I just got this pack of washers at Home Depot, and I just use a little washer and I glue it down just with my wet glue underneath the decorative paper. But because I was not paying attention to what I was doing, I did not do that. So I'm going to get the little Velcro dots to use in this one. So I would glue the magnet or the washer down on this side, and then on this side, because it's the decorative paper on the inside, I'm putting a piece on the top, and I would put the magnet under here which I use these little magnets that I got off eBay, and they're just big thing of them. They're really strong magnets. So that is if you're using magnets, and if you're using Velcro, I'll just get probably the little white Velcro dots, and I'll put the scruffy in here and the other one on this side, and it'll just Velcro together. Let's go ahead and get this glued down. So really it's just whatever decorative paper you decide to use, whichever side. Some of it I went ahead and printed double-sided. When I originally printed, I just printed single-sided because I wasn't really thinking about it, and that's why I came up with the envelope, and then I inked the edges. And this one, in the interest of time, and I just am being lazy, I guess, I decided not to ink this one up. I'm probably not going to fully decorate it either, just because that part takes some time sometimes to decide what you want where. And then this one here, and on this particular one, I went ahead and rounded the corners. And then I'm just leaving a little bit of white on the edges, and it pretty much comes to the top of that. And on the inside mats on this envelope one, I did 5 1/4 by 3 inches, so 5 1/4 by 3 inches, and then I rounded the corners. And then on the back side, which I will add my piece here, I think I'm going to add, I'm going to add the floral. See if I'm still in frame. It's 5 1/4 by 4 3/4. And then I again rounded the corners on these mats. And again, you could use whatever kind of adhesive you want to use. There goes my glue bottle to the floor. This one, just go right there and just cover up that other triangle. Okay, sorry about that. So that is pretty much the construction of this flip book. I know that was pretty quick, but basically I just decided which paper I wanted in what order for the envelopes, and then I glued the envelopes together and then did my scoring on the flaps and then just glued them. So underneath each one of these decorative papers are the little flaps, and that's where I did that. If you wanted to, you could glue your flap down on the inside. So if you had your pretty, if it was double-sided, you could have a different triangle here and glue your flap, you know, to connect it, each of the envelopes. So you could do that. This is another one that I made. This was the 8 1/2 by 8 1/2 paper. So it's got the little bit of white edge. And then I cut just a piece of paper, another piece of paper, and this one is 5 3/4 by 3 that could be glued down on the inside. So you could also do that if you didn't want to have the white envelope on the outside and didn't want to print double-sided, because you don't need that much if you want something to show, or you could just have it white. It would be completely up to you. And then just glue your sides, take that down. This is the one that I didn't like, the little mountain there, so I just cut that off straight on that. So that is another option for your envelopes. This was the one I made in my video earlier this week that I realized the video was like 30 minutes long. So that is the one that I did, and then you just fill your pockets with whatever, and that one has the magnet, so the magnet's here and the little washer is there. So there's that. And then I have my little bag of all the little bits, some laminated, the girls, so things like that that you can use to embellish and decorate. So I can add pockets. In this one, no, sorry. My original one, I did a belly band with the large pumpkins. I did one of the girls, but I printed her on transparency film. and then cut her out and put her on, backed her on a piece of white paper that I inked. So that's how I did that one. And then lastly, I just put a piece of Velcro to hold that together. And then I'll finish decorating with my cutouts. Lastly, I did another one, and this is again the 8.5 by 8.5 envelopes. Again, 4 envelopes. And I did a little bit different layout, and this one's all open. So it kind of goes. So I glued these 2 flaps together. I glued these 2 flaps together, so they're quite sturdy. And then I glued these 2 flaps together. And I was thinking about doing like a little photo flip here. So it could be whatever. And then that, insides go, and then this flips down, flips in, flips over, and I'll probably add, well, I don't know, I'll add a magnet or Velcro, or I might do just a ribbon to tie around it. So that was another idea with the flip book, just a different take on it. So I think that that is it. Oh, the last thing I used, this is the sponge. I don't know whether you can see that. It's an extra large all-purpose sponge that I got from Home Depot. And the sponge, well, the cut pieces look like this. It's a big sponge, and then I just cut it. And that's what I use for inking, and you can use just whatever ink you want. Just tap it in your ink and then brush it across the paper for the inking. So, to get the inking effect. And I do really like that. And then the not inked. Slightly different size envelopes, because I did, this one I cut the paper down and trimmed off the white edges on the paper. So the envelope's a little bit smaller, about 1/4 of an inch smaller. So there is what I did there. I hope that that answers questions for everybody and gives you an idea. I'm not the one that came up with this envelope flip book idea. There are many other videos out there on YouTube showing the different flip books that can be made. So this is just one, and this is just the one I chose to do with this paper this time. Oh, I also did a couple other things with the paper. I made some laminated things for washi samples. So it's just the pretty paper laminated. And I also made, I really probably am taking my time. Hopefully I'm not going too long. I made little pockets with the laminating sheets as well. So those were kind of fun. So I did those to go inside. So that's it. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will try to remember to put the dimensions, the paper dimensions, in the description box below. Thanks a lot. Bye.